Hello, my name is Jade. I read the autobiography Heads in Beds by Jacob Tomsky. It is a reckless memoir of hotels, hustles, and so-called hospitality. The autobiography it centers around the events that happened to Jacob Tomsky and his experiences working in the hotel industry, both in New Orleans and in New York City. While most of the events that Tomsky describes are based in New York City, there are a few key events that happened in New Orleans that are worth mentioning. First, that he got his start in hotels by working as a valet attendant. He was at a mid-level property and decided that he wanted to aspire for better. He wanted to challenge himself in the world of hotels and move on to a luxury property that was just opening. So he went there and learned verbiage and things like guest service and recovery model and anticipating guest needs. He was a valet attendant there for several months, and he quickly gained the recognition of inner management, impressed them, and was offered a front desk position there. Several months after working at the front desk, Tomsky had noticed that a bellman came from upstairs and came down to the lobby, was standing in the middle of the lobby, just looking down at his feet, looking really dejected. When Tomsky went over to go and talk to this bellman, the bellman told him that when he went up to the room to get the luggage, that a little girl had said to him, "Mommy, the servant's here." And that was that bellman's tipping point. That was that he quit on the spot after that. And he just said that he wasn't going to put up with it. So Tomsky was actually offered that position as a bellman, which would increase his paycheck. He would get a lot more money. However, he would die in that position. That once he became a bellman, that he wouldn't be anything else just because of the money. You get so used to the money and the lifestyle that it brings. Or he could be a housekeeping manager, and he could further his career. And at this point, Tomsky had stated previously that he had aspirations to be a general manager of a hotel. So Tomsky took the latter position as a housekeeping manager and started working 11-hour shifts and started seeing the perverse, weird, and disgusting things that guests did behind closed doors in their rooms when they're on vacation or when they're not at home, when they think that no one knows who they are and no one's going to judge them. He was still able to see the kindness of those guests who do come in and they are really nice and just genuine. But it was really too much for him. He'd gotten a phone call that really blindsided him. He was offered a position as a front office manager for a hotel in West Virginia, and he felt sick to his stomach as soon as he heard the offer. And it was simply because he didn't want to work in a thankless position working 11-hour shifts anymore. He was done with it, and he needed a break. So he did what most people would do in that situation, I'm assuming, and moved to Europe and spent a year in Europe's finest hostels. And from then, once reality hit and his bank account started becoming more and more depleted, he moved back to the States, to New York City, where he once again became a front desk agent. And he was working as an overnight agent. He described a lot of the things that happen overnight, the late night antics, how check-ins work overnight, because they are different than during the day. And he started learning a little bit of the hustle. He started working his way up to swing shifts and then to midday, and then his property in New York City called the Bellevue was bought over. And at that point, he had already become part of the union and therefore couldn't be fired with a new management team coming in and a new property operating director coming in. But that didn't stop them from gutting the entire security department for staff that would work at half the pay. Additionally, they renovated the entire property, upped the nightly rates significantly, which dramatically changed the clientele that came into the Bellevue. It was at this point that Tomsky began mastering the hustle, mastering the sandwiches at check-in, the tips and the what he calls the baby bricks and the big bricks and things like that. Pocketing cash for minibar charges when the guest doesn't need a receipt, and then just voiding off and disputing those items to the hotel's dispute account. Sending up a bottle of wine to a suite where they're celebrating their anniversary and getting a pocketed tip for that. Upgrading somebody to a view of Central Park so that a gentleman can propose to his girlfriend. Simple things like that. But what Tomsky did that impressed me was he really went above and beyond. He created his own business cards and he was giving them out to guests. He was, for return guests that come in each week at the same time, he was taking the credit card number from last week's reservation and putting it on this week's reservation, cutting keys for the guests, and just so that when they walk through the lobby, handing them the keys and they don't need to worry about it. He was the master of service, but the new management team that was in place was out for blood. And they were out for blood in the form of write-ups. So they started writing anyone and everyone up so that they could replace them with non-union members who would work for half the rate. This eventually got to Tomsky. He had accumulated, and he liked to keep thank you letters from people who he's helped in his pocket. And he got called in one day and was told that his service was lacking and that he needed to improve upon it. He threw the letters up in the air, and that was his tipping point. He threw the letters up in the air, and he just said, these are all the people who I've brought in and who I've created loyalty with at this property. That action of throwing the letters up in the air was misconstrued. There were group therapy sessions for anger management that were required after that, and he went back to work, but he wasn't the master of the hustle anymore. He really just worked for, not to get fired. My opinion of this book is that it was hilarious. I'm a front desk agent myself. Some of the things that he said have been the exact same words that have come out of my mouth to hundreds of guests. I've said the exact same things. I've dealt with the exact same scenarios, and I thought it was hilarious. I equate this book to sitting at a bar with a couple of my coworkers just chatting about the ridiculousness in these guests that we encounter during the day, and just having a laugh about it. And overall, and he made a point to say that it's not that he hates his job, it's just that because he does love his job, he does love what he does at the front desk, but just the way that front desk is treated and the way that front of the house staff are treated in hospitality, I think we all need a drink after it sometimes. So reading Heads in Beds was the drink without a drink, pretty much. It was kind of just laughing along with a buddy who you've never met before, and just saying, oh, I've been there. And being a student of hospitality, it's the same. You learn about these things, but nothing really prepares you for these situations that he's described: the hostile guests, the ones who are rude, who are racist or sexist and things like that. Nothing prepares you for that. But this book really would be the best book to read if you work at front desk. It's hilarious. It's funny. It's kind of crude and vulgar, but sometimes we all need that. I would definitely recommend Heads in Beds, and definitely worth a read.